What's up, Warrior Workshop? This is Mr. Miller coming to you with another tutorial video. This time, I'm going to be walking you through the process of getting Onshape, an STL file, which is like a mesh, from Onshape into Bambu Studio, and then from Bambu Studio, sending it on over to the printers. So that's the workflow, that's the process. Right here, I have a very simple design. You can see just a vase or a pot. And I'm going to be sending this thing on over to the Bambu Studio. I'm going to walk you through that process. So check it out. First, number one is you should be designing with 3D printing in mind. And what I mean by that is when you have an object like this, you want to make sure that you're not adding unnecessary complications. If you can design without overhangs, and what I mean by that is like big areas that have a bunch of air underneath them when they print, please do that. It's going to make your print better. So make sure you're thinking about designing with 3D printing in mind. If you're not sure what that means, remember that 3D prints, you have a plate, you have the extruder, and it prints layer by layer. It can't magically print way off in the sky over here unless there's something below it. If you try to do that, you'll end up with a huge pile of spaghetti. So with that being said, this part right here should print no problem. It does have some level of overhang. If we zoom around here just a little bit, we can see it's not as if you can't design with some overhang. It's just I couldn't have a vase that went straight up like this and then way on out over here in space without something below it. So as long as these angles don't exceed 50, 60 degrees, shouldn't be that big of a deal. Sometimes you'll be surprised at how good the prints turn out, even with a decent amount of overhang, but be cautious. If you do have an overhang or your part requires it, there's no other way around it, when you get to Bambu Studio, you'll be turning on supports. Alrighty, so the next step is I'm gonna go ahead and I wanna show you this. This is important because people always forget to do this. Is you should be going down here and naming your parts. So I'm gonna right click on it and click rename. And the reason why I wanna do that is because when I export this part, I don't want it to be called Part Studio 1 because it'll just get confusing. So I'm gonna name this Vase 1, if I can type, Miller. And I don't even spell my name right. Okay, Miller. Once I do that, that's good because the next step is I'm going to be taking this object, this Part Studio, I'm going to be exporting it. So I'm going to right click on it and then click export. All right, so here's a really important part. So I look through this, everything's good, it's STL, but here under units, this is the mission critical part. If you designed in millimeters, you need to be making sure that you are, right here, millimeters, you need to make sure that when you export your STL file, that it is also in millimeters. Do not make the mistake of designing in inches and then exporting in millimeters. What will happen is your part, which you think is gonna be this big, will shrink down to a teeny tiny part, and then you'll have to deal with scaling it, or you have to come back to Onshape and re-export and restart the process. So make sure that you are designing with the units in mind. If you design in inches, export in inches. If you design in millimeters, export in millimeters. Resolution, you shouldn't have to mess with that unless you really, really, really want precision, but medium is just fine. Fine is good too, but I wouldn't go any less than that to coarse, unless you had a specific reason. So go ahead and click export. You also can see up here what the file's name is going to be. It is Vase 1 Miller, which is what we changed our Part Studio to just a couple minutes ago. So if you click export, you end up with this thing, vase1miller.stl. All right, so the next step is for you to take that STL file, the thing that you just exported, and throw it into Bambu Studio or upload it to Bambu Studio. So I've gone ahead and opened up Bambu Studio. This is what you'll see when you click on the preview tab up here at the top. And one of the first things that you want to do is double check Number one, in the top left-hand corner, does it say Bambu Lab X1 Carbon 0.4 nozzle? That is the printer and the nozzle size that we have in the workshop. If you don't see that, please change it to this printer. Otherwise it won't work. The other thing that you should realize is all the printers right now have the textured PEI plate. If you do not select that, it'll throw up an error. So make sure this and this match. Then you want to go down here and double check your filament. Right now we are using just a few different types of filament. You want to make sure that whatever you choose is what is currently on the printer that you ultimately select. And I'll come back to this one in just a sec. So let's talk about importing something onto this build plate. So I'm going to go ahead and click on prepare. And up here, there is an add button. So if I click add, I can find the file that I just downloaded on my computer. And let's see, I'm going to scroll and find it until I see it. Let's see, base 1 miller. Okay, so this is the thing that I just named. I'm going to go ahead and click open. All right, so here's the vase. It's pretty big. We can rescale this if we want, if the sizing is not critical, if you just want something to be printed out and you're not trying to fit something together. But I have this on my build plate. It's there right in the center. I can click and move it around. If for whatever reason, when you import it, it is at a weird rotation, we can use these grab handles and we can rotate things like this. But you want to be careful when you're doing that, and you want to be specific about why you're rotating it. Again, if you need to rotate, you can grab these handles. If you grab the square ones, you could rotate around. But I don't really need to do that. The way it showed up on the build plate was just fine. If for whatever reason your file is at a weird angle, or your STL file is at a weird angle, you can go and click Auto Orient. And I would say 90% of the time, the computer does the work for you and it turns your print in the correct orientation where it makes sense. If you wanted to, you can also import other STL files all on one build plate. And there are additional options beyond that, but we're not, this is just a basic video for now. So if I wanted to, I could add more STL files, and then I could tell the computer or the program to arrange all the objects automatically. And this is really handy to do if you want the best print time possible. So here we have our print. Everything's looking good. I'm just clicking with my left button. And I don't think I need supports. If I come over here, I'm going to go ahead and select generic PLA because I know that is actually the type of PLA I'm using on my printers right now. Is just a generic PLA. It seems to be working just fine. In the process right here under this tab, you can select several different options or many different options. For me, I'm going to go ahead and go on 0.2 millimeter standard. You can see there's draft and strength. Depending on what you select, your print will be of higher quality, but it might also take longer to print. So if you're up here at extra fine, you're going to get that extra fine detail, but it's going to take much, much longer to actually print this thing out. So I'm going to go ahead and click on 0.2 standard, which works, for 80% of the situations. If you did want to turn on supports for whatever reason, you just click over here on the support tab and turn that on. So you turn this on, or you can turn it off. And you can mess with some of the settings here. Again, in a more advanced video, I might get to that. So I'm going to leave the supports off. Once everything looks ready to go, I'm going to go ahead and click Slice Plate. It's going to work through slicing this program, and it's going to come up with a menu or some information that comes like this. It's going to tell you what it's doing, where its infill is, where the overhang is, if there's any gaps. It's going to show those here. Now, if I wanted to, I could go through on the right-hand side and I could scroll through the different layers of the print, which is pretty cool. If I also wanted to, I could say, look at this layer, and I could scroll over here to the right or at the bottom, and I can actually see what the printer is doing at any point of that print process. And I can even look at the G code, which is right here, which is pretty cool. When everything looks good and you don't see any errors, you can go ahead and click Print Plate. Now, this is the critical part in the Warrior Workshop. You need to make sure that you select a printer that is not busy, that is clean, has filament in it, ready to go. And the filament that's in it is enough to finish your print job. If it ever looks like the filament is low, don't use that printer, okay? Unless you know that your print's really small. So at this point, I'm gonna walk on over to the printers, look at them, and decide which one looks best. All right, I've cruised on over to the 3D printer zone and I'm scoping for the right one. Oh, it looks like it's lucky number 7. I like the filament color, it's PLA, everything looks good. I'm gonna go ahead and open up number 7 and check to make sure that the print bed is all clear of debris. Ah, it looks like somebody who went to the printers last left some of the plastic on it. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab one of the scrapers. You should probably use the plastic one instead of the sharp one, unless you have some really stubborn PLA to get off. I'm gonna grab whatever scrap is in there and carefully remove it, and then take it on over to the scrap bin. Once I know which printer I'm using, I'm gonna go back to Bambu Studio and select printer 7 and then click print. I'm back at Bambu Studio and now I'm double checking all my settings over here on the left. Everything looks good. I've already clicked slice plate and my total time looks all right. I'm gonna go ahead and click print plate. A little window will pop up. I'm selecting printer 7 and then I click print. Once I've selected the print, I'm going to go ahead and go to the device window. You can see I've clicked it up here at the top. And you can actually see a live video feed of the printer. Down at the bottom, it tells you what the printer is actually doing, its percentage. You can control some things like turning the preview or the camera on and off. You can turn the lamp on and off, and generally control the printer from this window. Once the print works, or printer starts, it's going to go through a calibration process, and then after a couple minutes, it'll start actually printing your object. Everything's looking good. And that's it for your 3D printing tutorial. Pick up your print, clean the print bed, and get ready for the next project. See you next time.